Hello friends, welcome to my channel Imaginarium, and in this video I'm going to explain you the chapter Making of the Constitution. So I'm going to cover all these topics in detail. Like the agenda for the today is going to be uh, demand of the Constitution Assembly, composition, working of the Constitution Assembly, committees, various committees of the Constitution Assembly, enactment of the Constitution, enforcement of the Constitution, expert committees, criticism of the Constitution Assembly, and some important fact. So let's get started, guys. So here it is. I'm going to talk about making of the Constitution. I will be talking about like how our Constitution Assembly got formed, how when how and when was the demand was put for the Constitution Assembly, who were it comprised of, like who were those people who formed the Constitution Assembly and then they created the task of making the Constitution, what were the various committees and their criticism at the end, and some important facts. So before starting, guys, I would like to say, like, you can give me any feedback, any review, or any topic you can suggest me on which you would like to see any video. You can give me any suggestion. My channel is open for everything, and keep watching, keep suggesting, and like and subscribe, and do as much as query, ask anything which you can do anything. So let's get started. So here the first topic is like demand for a constitution assembly. So it was in 1934 the idea of the Constitution Assembly for India was put forward for the first time was the M.N. Roy. So M.N. Roy was the person who put forward the idea of Constitution Assembly for the first time in 1934. In 1935, later, the Indian National Congress for the first time officially demanded a Constitution Assembly to frame the Constitution of India. In 1935, what happened? Like Indian National Congress for the first time demanded. Later, in 1938, Jawaharlal Nehru, on behalf of the Indian National Congress, declared the Constitution of Free India must be framed without outside interference by a Constitution Assembly elected on the basis of the adult franchise. So here, Jawaharlal Nehru in 1938 said that the Constitution of Free India would be framed without outside interference, and a Constitution Assembly must be elected on the basis of the adult franchise. Now, these were the three things when the demand were. These are the initial phases in which demands are being made on the various platforms of the various years. Now, the demand was finally accepted when in August offer. So, demand was finally accepted in the principle by the British government, which is known as August offer in 1940. So, 1940 was the year in which the demand was accepted for the Constitution Assembly. A cabinet mission was sent to India. While it rejected the idea of the two Constitution Assembly, it put forth a scheme of the Constitution Assembly which more or less satisfied the Muslim League. The Constitution Assembly was constituted in November 1946 under the scheme formulated by the Cabinet Mission Plan. So the Constitution Assembly was formulated under the scheme of the Cabinet Mission Plan. Moving next, the feature of the schemes were, what were the features of the scheme? Like what was going to be the strength, how how the people are going to be elected who will be forming the constitution. Here we will be talking about that. So the total strength of the Constitution Assembly was 389. Of these, 296 seats were allocated to the British India and 93 seats to the princely states. Each province and princely state or a group of a state in case of small states were to be allocated seat in proportion to their respective population. Okay, and roughly one seat were to be allocated to every million population. So each province and princely states were going to get the seats in proportion to their respective population, and every one seat will be going to be given to the every 1 million population. Clear? Now moving next, the seat allocated to the British province. Here we have talked about the province and the princely state. Now we are talking about the British province. So the British province were going to be divided among the three principal communities: Muslim, Sikh, and General. So British province were basically going to be divided among three religion: Muslim, Sikh, and General, three communities, and General included all except Muslim and Sikh in proportion to their population. And how these people are going to be elected? So the representative of the each community were to be elected by the members of that community. So the each community representative were going to be elected by that community member only in the provincial legislative assembly, and voting was to be done by the method of the proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. So each community members were going to be elected by the members of that community only in the provincial legislative assembly, and election was going to be held by the means of proportional representation. So it was not a direct election. The representative of the princely state were to be nominated by the head of the princely state. So princely state people were going to be nominate their uh, people for the constitution assembly, and nomination was done by the head of the princely state. So it is clear that the Constitution Assembly was to be partially elected and the partially nominated body. So Constitution Assembly was going to be partially elected also, because the British province people were going to be elected, and on the other hand the princely states and province we saw that they are going to be the nominated body. So the princely state was going to be nominated body and the British India was going to be the elected body. So the Constitution Assembly going to be the partially elected and partially nominated body. Moreover, the members were to be indirectly elected because there was no direct election on the basis of the universal adult franchise. The election was going to be indirect by the members of the provincial assembly, who themselves were elected on the basis of the limited franchise. The election to the Constitution Assembly for 296 allocated to the British Indian province were held in July-August 1946. The Indian National Congress won 280 seats, the Muslim League 73 seats, and the small group and independent got the remaining 15 seats. However, the 93 seats allocated to the princely state were not filled as they decided to stay away from the Constitution Assembly. So the princely state decided to stay away from the Constitution Assembly. Now, the assembly comprised representative of all sections of the Indian society. So the princely state have decided to stay away. Now, here it is talking about who all the assembly comprised of. It comprised of all sections of the Indian society, including Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Parsis, Anglo-Indian, Indian Christian, SC, ST, including women of all those sections. The assembly included all important personalities of India at that time, with the exception of Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi was not the part of the assembly, and you must know that he was never in favor of forming a constitution. Moving next, now working of the Constitution Assembly. So the first meeting of the Constitution Assembly was held on December 9, 1946. This was the date on which the first meeting was held. The Muslim League boycotted the meeting and insisted on a separate state of Pakistan. So earlier we have seen that the princely state stay away. Now the Muslim League also boycotted. The meeting was thus attended by the 211 members. So whenever it asks that how many people attended the first meeting that was held on December 9, 1946, so 211 members. Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, the oldest member, was elected the temporary president. So the temporary president was Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, and this was done following the French practice. In the French practice, what happens, like the oldest member is chosen as the president. So we followed the French practice here. Later, Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president of the assembly. Later on, Rajendra Prasad became. Similarly, both H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamachari were elected as the vice president of the assembly. In other words, we can say that assembly had the two vice presidents. Now, objective resolution. So we have seen like our objective resolution was passed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and our preamble is said to be being based on objective resolution, which was passed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Our preamble contains the entire crisp and everything. It contains everything which was there in the objective resolution. So what was that objective resolution? What were its contain? So that we are going to discuss here. So objective resolution was passed on December 13, 1946. Jawaharlal Nehru. On December 13, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru moved the objective resolution in the assembly. It laid the fundamentals and philosophy of the constitutional structure. So objective resolution was nothing but the fundamentals and philosophy of the constitutional structure. ऑब्जेक्टिव रेजोल्यूशन वही था जिसमें ये बताया गया है कि हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का फंडामेंटल्स और फिलॉसफी क्या होने वाला है. जैसे एक बिल्डिंग बनाते हैं तो उसकी जो नींव रखी जाती है तो उसके फंडामेंटल्स और फिलॉसफी सेम वे यू कैन रिलेट कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बनने वाला है, उसका नींव, उसका फंडामेंटल्स और फिलॉसफी क्या होगा, वो हमने इन शॉर्ट में ऑब्जेक्टिव रेजोल्यूशन में बताया है. So what let's study this in detail now. Proclaim India as the independent sovereign republic. The territories that now comprise British India, the territories now form the Indian states, and such other parts of India as are outside India, and the states as well as other territories are willing to be constituted into the independent sovereign India shall be a union of them. So here it is saying that India proclaims India as a sovereign republic, and it is talking about what all territories are going to be included in the Union of India, wherein all power and authority of the sovereign independent India, its constituent parts and organs of the government are derived from the people. Here it's saying that how the power and authority is going to be derived. It is going to be derived from the people. It guaranteed and secured to all the people of India justice, social, economic, and political, equality of and status and opportunity before the law, freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, vocation, association, and action subject to law and public morality, wherein adequate safeguards shall be provided for minorities, backwards, and tribals, and depressed and other backward classes, whereby shall be maintained the integrity of the territory of the Republic and its sovereign rights of land, sea, air, according to the justice and the law of civilized nations. This ancient land attains its rightful and honored place in the world and makes its full and willing contribution to the promotion of world peace and the welfare of the mankind. So these were the things which were being talked in the objective resolution, and our preamble, whether it talks about the power of source, people, its objective, its nature, everything has in the preamble has been derived from this objective resolution only. Now that we will see in the next line, it is saying that this resolution was unanimously adopted by the Assembly on January 22nd, 1947. And it influenced the eventual shaping of the constitution through all its subsequent stages. Its modified version forms the preamble of the present constitution. So we see that its modified version is the preamble. In preamble, everything is written like nature, source, date of adoption, everything is based on the objective resolution. Now changes by the Independent Act. So there were three major changes that were being made after the Independence Act was enacted that we will cover in the next slide. Here it's also talking about something in like what all changes were there. So the representative of the princely state who had stayed away from the Constitution Assembly gradually joined. Princely state who earlier decided to stay away gradually joined the constitution making process. On April 20, 1947, the representative of the six states were part of the assembly. After the acceptance of the Mountbatten Plan on June 3, 1947, forced the partition of the country, the representative of most of the other princely states took their seat in the assembly. The members of the Muslim League from the Indian dominant also entered the assembly. So here it's talking like princely state who earlier decided to stay away, princely state joined, and Muslim League who were forming the part of the Indian dominant also entered the assembly. And now it's talking about the three major changes that were made. The Indian Independence Act 1947 made the following three changes in the position of the assembly. So what were three major changes after the enactment of the Independence Act of 1947? We will see this now. The assembly was made a fully sovereign body which could frame any constitution it pleased. The Act empowered the Assembly to abrogate or alter any law made by the British Parliament in relation to India. So it gave right to India to form any constitution for India, for free India, and it is free to abrogate or alter any law that was previously made by the British Parliament. So India acted as a fully sovereign body. Assembly acted as a fully sovereign body. The second point is the assembly also became a legislative body. In other words, two separate functions were assigned to the assembly, that is making the constitution for the free India and enacting the ordinary law of land for the country. So now the constitution was provided with following two tasks. Two tasks it was given. on the first place, it was making the constitution for the free India, and the other hand, it is going to make even the ordinary law of land for the country. So whenever the assembly became the first parliament of the free India. It became the first parliament of the free India. So whenever the assembly met as a constitutional body, it was chaired by the Rajendra Prasad, and when it met as a legislative body to make laws for the ordinary law of land, it was headed by the by G.V. Malvikar. So when it made as a constitutional body, it was headed by Rajendra Prasad, and when it met as a legislative body to enact the ordinary law, it was headed by G.V. Malvikar. And the Muslim League members hailing from the area included in the Pakistan withdraw from the Constitution Assembly. Okay. So here we see in the Mountbatten plan, it was decided that India is going to be divided. So all those Muslim League members who hail from the Pakistan, as per the partition plan, withdraw from the Constitution Assembly. Now, there were other major functions also that was being performed by the Constitution Assembly. Guys, this is very important, and you have to remember these 5 important tasks that were even performed by the Constitution Assembly. So, in addition to making the Constitution, enacting ordinary law, the Constitution Assembly also performed the following tasks. First is, it ratified the India's membership of the Commonwealth in May 1949. So we have seen, like, once the India became the sovereign country, it decided to continue its membership to the Commonwealth, whose head was going to be the British Crown, and being its member is not going to affect India's sovereignty in any way. So that was decided, that was the first thing. It adopted the national flag on July 22nd, 1947. It adopted national anthem on January 24, 1950, adopted national song on January 24, 1950, elected Rajendra Prasad as the first president of India on January 24, 1950. So these are the 5 things that were also being performed by the Constitution Assembly. Now some facts. This includes like how our constitution was performed, the time it took, what all different constitution we have read, and all that. So let's cover it one by one. So it's talking about the Constitution Assembly had 11 sessions in total. So guys, one session contains of various sittings. Okay, in one session there are various sittings. So I'm not here talking about the sittings, we are talking about session. So over and all, there are total 11 sessions. Okay, and the time took for the constitution to complete it 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So this was the total duration which was taken to form the constitution. The constitution makers has gone through the constitution of 60 countries. We have gone through the constitution of 60 countries, then we have formed our constitution. And the draft constitution was considered for 114 days. When the first draft constitution was released for the public for consideration, it was being considered for 114 days. Modification, amendments, and everything was suggested on these days for which it was considered. The total expenditure incurred on making the constitution amounted to 64 lakh. Okay. On January 24, 1950, the constitution held its final session. Final session of the constitution was held on January 24, 1950. The Constitution Assembly continued at the Provincial Parliament of India from January 26, 1950 till the formation of the new parliament after the first general election in 1950 and 51. So this Constitution Assembly enacted as the first parliament of India until the first general election was held, and that was held on 1951 to 1952. This was the duration when the first general election of the free India was held. Now, for framing the constitution, that was a very lengthy task. Our constitution makers has made various committees. There were various major committees, various minor committees that they were given the task for performing different things. So here we will be talking about the major committees. Okay. So the Constitution Assembly appointed a number of committees to deal with the different tasks of constitution making, and out of these 8 major committees and other were the minor committees. I will not be talking about the minor committee, guys. I will be talking about the major committees. So the 8 major committees were the Union Power Committee headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, the Union Constitution Committee headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, again the Provincial Constitution Committee headed by Sardar Patel, Drafting Committee headed by B.R. Ambedkar, Advisory Committee on the Fundamental Rights, Minorities and Tribal and the Excluded Area headed by Sardar Patel, Rule of Procedure Committee headed by Rajendra Prasad, States Committee, Committee for Negotiating with States headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and Steering Committee headed by Rajendra Prasad. Okay, so these were the 8 major committees that were chaired by different people. Out of these 8 major committees, the most important committee was the drafting committee, which were given the task of forming the constitution. There were even minor committees. I will not be talking about that. So in coming, so in this different committees, these were the chairman, you can say, who headed the committee, but there were various members also who performed the task, who all of them collaborated and performed the task. So I will be talking about the drafting committee here. So it says that the most important committee was the drafting committee. It was the committee that was entrusted with the task of preparing a draft for the new constitution, and it consisted of 7 members. So drafting committee had 7 members. So these members were B.R. Ambedkar, who acted as the chairman, and Gopalaswamy Iyer, Alauddin Krishnaswamy Iyer, Dr. K.M. Munshi, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, and Madhav Rao. He was later replaced by B.L. Mittal, who resigned due to the ill health, T.A.T. Krishnamachari, who replaced D.P. Ketan, who died in 1948. So these were the 7 members of the drafting committee. Now the first draft published in February 1948. So this was the time when the first draft constitution was published, and the people of India were given the 8-month period to discuss the draft and propose amendments. The second draft was published in October 1948. So 8 months were given to consider this draft. 8-month duration were given to the people to discuss, suggest any feedback and amendment to the draft. And the second draft was later released on the August 1948. Now coming to the next slide that talks about the enactment of the constitution. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar introduced the first draft of the constitution in assembly on November 4, 1948. First reading was done. The motion of the draft constitution was declared as passed on November 26, 1948 and received the signature of the members of the president. So this was the date, November 4, 1948, when the first draft of the constitution was made and first reading was done. And the motion of the draft was declared as passed on November 26, 1948. Okay, and received the signature of the members of the president. Out of the total 299 members of the assembly, only 284 were actually present on that date and signed the constitution. So when the constitution was signed on November 26, 1949, it's saying that out of the 299 members, only 284 members were actually present. This is also the date present in the preamble as the date on which the people of India in the Constitution Assembly adopted, enacted and gave to themselves the constitution. So November 26, 1949 has been adopted as our Constitution Day. The constitution as adopted on November 26, 1949, it contained one preamble, 395 articles and 8 schedules. The constitution when it was adopted originally contained one preamble, 395 articles and 8 schedules. Later on, various amendments have been done, and now the articles and the schedules are being changed, numbers have changed. But when it was originally adopted, these were the figures. The preamble was enacted after the entire constitution was already enacted. So preamble was the last one to be adopted because we wanted the preamble to be in sync with our constitution. So that was the last thing to be adopted. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, recognized as the father of the Constitution of India and the chief architect of the Constitution of India, as also known as Modern Manu. So who is the father of the Constitution of India? B.R. Ambedkar. Now the enforcement part of the Constitution, we come to that. So some provision of the Constitution pertaining to citizenship, election, provincial parliament and temporary and transitional provision and short title contained in these articles, you can read that, came into force on November 26, 1949 itself. Guys, this is very important because sometimes it asks like which all part came to force in November 26, 1949. So you have to remember like the citizenship, elections, provincial parliament, temporary and transitional provision, and these some part of these articles which came into force in November 26, 1949. But the remaining provision, that is the major part of the constitution, came into force on January 26, 1950. But the major portion of the constitution came into force on January 26, 1940. This day is referred to in the constitution as the date of the commencement and celebrated as the Republic Day. Now, January 26 was especially chosen as the date of the commencement of the constitution because of its historical importance. So, why we have chosen January 26? Because of its historical importance. And what is the historical importance? That in 1930, that Poon Swaraj Day was declared following the resolution of the Lahore session, December 1929, of the Indian National Congress. So it was on this date, January 26, 1930, when the Poon Swaraj was first declared. That's why we have chosen this date as the Republic Day of India. With the commencement of the Constitution, the Indian Independence Act of 1947 and the Government of India Act of 1935, with all its enactments amending or supplementing the later act, were repealed. Both of these were repealed. The Abolition of Privacy Council Jurisdiction Act 1949, however, continued. So we have continued with this, but we have repealed the Indian Independence Act of 1947 and the Government of India Act of 1935. Now coming to the criticism of the Constitution. So guys, we know that whenever something is being made, there are some positive and negative things of that. So even the Constitution Assembly were made, when the Constitution was made, some people were still unsatisfied with the Constitution, and there are a lot of criticism to the Constitution. Now I will be covering that one by one. The first is not a representative body. So some people argue that the Constitution Assembly was not a representative body as its members were not directly elected by the people of India on the basis of the universal adult franchise. Because it was people were not directly elected of the Constitution Assembly, it is called not a representative body, as it is not representing the people of India. Not a sovereign body. Critics maintain that the Constitution Assembly was not a sovereign body as it was chaired by the proposal of the British government. Created by the proposal of the British government. Further, they said that the assembly held its session with the permission of the British government. So the second argument is that it is not a sovereign body. The third argument is saying that it is time consuming because it took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to complete the constitution. That's why I said that the Constitution Assembly took unduly long time to make the constitution, where they give the argument like American Constitution that was formed in 4 months only. Now the fourth argument is dominated by Congress. The critics charge that the Constitution Assembly was dominated by Congress party because most of the members belonged to the Congress party. Even other parties had the representation, but that was very less as compared to the Congress party. Lawyers and political paradise. It is also maintained that by the critics that the Constitution Assembly was dominated by lawyers and politicians. They pointed out that other sections of the society were not sufficiently represented. This to them is the main reason for the bulkiness and the complicated language of the Constitution. They say that since the Constitution are being majorly fought by the lawyers and the politicians, it is difficult for the normal people to interpret the Constitution. Now, coming to the last argument that says dominated by Hindu. So according to some critics, the Constitution Assembly was a Hindu dominated body. One religion that get majority that had reflected the Constitution Assembly, that was Hindu. Other religion were represented, but they were in very less number. So these are basically the main criticism of the Constitution Assembly. Now coming to the last part of this lecture that contains the important facts. These are very interesting facts, guys. I want you to remember all these and see this these are very interesting facts. You must know that. So first point is elephant was elected as the seal of the Constitution Assembly. The symbol of or the seal of the Constitution Assembly was elephant. Dr. B.N. Roy was appointed as the constitutional advisor, legal advisor to the Constitution Assembly. The legal advisor of the Constitution Assembly was Dr. B.N. Roy. Prem Bihari Nayar Razad was the calligrapher of the Indian Constitution. The original Constitution was handwritten by him in the forming italic style. So, who has written the Constitution? It was written by Prem Bihari Nayar Raza. He has done the calligraphy of the Indian Constitution in the italic style. Now, last point says the calligraphy of the Hindi version. Here we are talking about the Hindi version of the original constitution was done by the Vasant Krishna Vidya and elegantly decorated and illustrated by the Nandlal Bose. So Hindi version was written by Vasant Krishna Vidya and elegantly decorated and illustrated by Nandlal Bose. So these are some very interesting facts that you should remember. So guys, here I conclude my videos and I request you to like, subscribe and share this video as much as you can, and you can give your feedback anytime, anywhere. Like even I have made Telegram channel. I will soon sharing the link of my Telegram channel. So there also you can join my channel and you can post your queries, and you can even share your feedback if you want some improvement, or you can even suggest me some topic if you want to see some videos on that. So guys, till then, keep watching and subscribe, like and share. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you.